certified hood classic.
I not only don't want to defund the police, I'm the one calling for $300 million more for local police. The only person calling to defund the police is Donald Trump.
Oh, Mr. Block, you were born by mistake. You take the cake. You make me ache. Go tie a rock on your block and then jump in a lake. Kindly do that for liberty's sake. I feel vindicated. For all of the videos that I made about liberals, I was gonna make this video sooner, but another certain video took priority. We're going to be talking about a self-proclaimed comedian by the name of Austin Archer, who is an all-around creative content creator, an actor, comedian, and musician. And I don't know what his music is like, but we're going to be talking about his comedy and or acting. Today we're going to be talking about a video called
The Ceaseless Code of Terminally Online White Leftists.
As somebody who just dropped a 4+ hour video essay about another terminally online leftist and how fucking disgusting he is, I agree that there is a need to critique terminally online leftists. But this is not that principled critique in which you're looking for. Rather, this is some blue hog type shit where you're going to be running into layers and layers of straw man. Yes, I recognize that he has readdressed this in a 1 hour and 41 minute video, but the 14-minute video is about all I could stomach for today. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it.
Kamala would have been just as bad as Trump, and you guys wouldn't care. On her first day in office, she would have written an executive order that says that there are only 2 genders, and she would have said, we're gonna get men out of women's sports.
So there's 2 primary things to say about this. First of all, he's trying to argue against the conflation that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are the same party.
She'd have done the tariffs. I hate to break it to you.
She'd have done the tariff.
If 10 years ago you had asked me if that was my opinion, I would have said yes. But I don't feel that way anymore. Instead, my opinion of the Democrats and the Republicans is that they serve the same agenda. Politicians from both parties are bought out by the billionaire interest, and sometimes by the same billionaire interest. This invested interest for these politicians to seek a career in politics is why they have the job in the first place.
If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
We are commanded to support Israel. And what does that mean, Israel? We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what, hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
the
God's referring to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
So I understand the position in which he is attempting to satirize here, that Kamala Harris would do exactly the same thing as Donald Trump. And of course, that's just not true. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are not the same person. Kamala Harris would definitely not be doing literally everything that Donald Trump does. You don't need to be a political scientist to understand that fundamental point. But history did not start yesterday. My audience will remember when I made that video about why I didn't vote for Kamala Harris in the 2024 US presidential race. Thank you for telling me that you supported President Trump in the 2024 US presidential election.
You know if you connect your top lip to your bottom lip, you'll shut the fuck up.
I know that you're in la 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 mode right now, but maybe listen to the people that you pretend to give a fuck about, Austin.
She would have written an executive order that says that there are only 2 genders.
The video was about an hour long, and I didn't just make this decision because of pointless conjecture.
Where we have seen this issue on the ballot, to your point about elections, from red states to blue states, when freedom is on the ballot, the American people vote for freedom, regardless of the party they are registered to vote with. We have seen that. And I know that there are members of the United States Congress who are well aware that their constituents are in favor of the very fundamental principle that a woman should be able to make decisions about her own body and not have a government tell her what to do.
I am so sorry, but that is not an answer to the question that was being asked. Let's listen to the question one more time.
If you win, it is entirely possible that Congress will be controlled by Republicans. So what specific concessions would you be willing to make in order to get something done on abortion access as soon as possible?
And her answer is that the voters are just going to pressure the members of Congress, and she didn't say anything about her pressure in Congress, now did she? These are not actionable words. These are not, I'm going to do this, and you're going to have abortion rights. If she's going to have the executive seat, then she needs to have some kind of spine in the words that she is using here. She didn't promise to do anything to meaningfully fight on the issues that people cared about, including securing abortion rights, securing trans rights, and stopping the genocide in Gaza.
The crazy thing is that if she was elected president, she 1000% would have let Elon Musk and a gang of unhinged 19-year-old incels just absolutely run amok through the federal government, just taking a buzzsaw to several departments, just absolutely eliminating hundreds, thousands of jobs, claiming they're uncovering hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud and saving trillions, but actually not doing any of those things. That totally would have happened regardless of who had won the 2024 presidential election.
Which, by the way, at the time, she was participating in that genocide. The Biden administration, which she was the vice president of at the time, was sending billions upon billions of dollars to Israel so that they can go slaughter Palestinians. And then what did they do after that? They went to bomb Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. And that was during the Biden administration. All Donald Trump did was inherit that proxy war. Because the point is not that Donald Trump is the same person as Joe Biden, rather the point is that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are fundamental symptoms of U.S. imperialism.
She would have taken direct hostile aim at the trans community immediately, and you guys just would have lapped it up.
As I said in my Kamala Harris video, she didn't make any promises to stand up for trans people. In fact, when pressed on the question for trans rights, she often was very shy about it.
Just broadly speaking, what is your value? Do you believe they should have that access?
I believe that people, as the law states, even on this issue about federal law, that is a decision that doctors will make in terms of what is medically necessary. I'm not going to put myself in the position of a doctor, but let's also understand that Donald Trump is running tens of millions of dollars in ads to talk about two cases, to distract from the fact that his policy and plan is also to take away the Affordable Care Act, which provides health care for tens of millions of people in our country, that his plan is to undo the cap, the $35 a month cap on insulin, that it impacts millions of seniors in our country, that his plan is to do away with the $2,000 cap on prescription medication, the annual cap, that his plan is to get rid of the Department of Education, which would mean getting rid of Head Start, that his plan is to give tax cuts to billionaires and big corporations and on the backs of middle class working people. So let's not get distracted by the issues that, to your point from the introductory point you raised, people want to know that their president has a plan to make their life better. And that includes bringing down the cost of living. It includes dealing with prescription medication costs. It includes addressing the housing crisis and affordable housing crisis in our country. It includes supporting our small businesses, investing in American industries, and strengthening our economy.
The question was about trans people's access to gender-affirming care. On top of that, Joe Biden made the promise that he was going to enshrine the Equality Act.
Joe Biden says LGBTQ rights would be his top legislative priority.
Top legislative priority.
He announced that he would want to incorporate LGBTQ protections into the nation's labor and civil rights laws. The Equality Act would also address many discriminatory practices.
This never happened. On top of that, I think it would be worth visiting Erin in the morning. Take a look at this map. It's obviously not as bad as it is right now, but given that this is what anti-transgender legislation looked like before the result of the 2024 US presidential election, at no point did Joe Biden look at this map and say, maybe I should fucking do something about it. Maybe I should use my executive powers to fucking do something about it.
She would have taken direct hostile aim at the trans community immediately, and you guys just would have.
Of course, these are all legislations that are being passed at a state level, where Biden had authority at the federal level, but then why is Donald Trump able to steamroll all of these anti-transgender policies when he now has the same exact power? The point that I'm making here is that while the Democrats are not willing to do anything to protect trans people, the Republicans are willing to do everything to antagonize trans people.
Kamala would have been just as bad as Trump, and you guys wouldn't care.
So when Austin Archer here is comedically building a straw man, arguing against a point that does not even exist in the first place within the discourse as to why people don't trust the Democratic Party, he is doing so because he doesn't even have a fundamental point in the first place. And you can tell that rather than an analysis, this is going to be a grievance post centering around victim blaming instead of blaming the ruling class. You know, the very people doing all of the evil shit which we're gonna talk about in this video.
She would have kidnapped the president of Venezuela, she would have killed the Ayatollah of Iran, she would have threatened to take over Greenland and Cuba and Canada and Mexico, all while claiming she ended 9 separate wars that she can't name.
I don't even really know what to say about this one. It's like, is he trying to be funny? Is this comedy? At this point, he would have to explain the joke. And apparently the joke is that the left believe that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are the same person. But that's not the criticism being made at Kamala Harris. He's making a straw man. And on top of that, as a comedian, he's failed to deliver a joke because you'd have to actually explain the joke.
You don't think Kamala Harris would have made a concentration camp for children, called it Alligator Alcatraz, and then sold merchandise for that concentration camp? You don't think that would have happened? Really?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks! Again, this is a fundamental lack of understanding of the topic in which he is talking about. The Democratic Party does nothing to protect people. The Republican Party, on the other hand, does everything to exploit people. Both parties have their billionaire invested interest. The Democratic Party just takes the money and do what the billionaire says, while the Republican Party takes the billionaire money and does everything with a louder, racist, and bigoted policy stance. And again, this is a straw man. He has to build the leftist argument, which I already painstakingly made, but he's just gonna keep doing it anyway.
If you genuinely don't think that Kamala Harris would use tens of billions of taxpayer dollars to tear down the East Wing of the White House and build herself her own personal ballroom, I don't know what to tell you. You're not living in reality.
Originally, I was going to play this entire segment in full, but considering that he's not really making a point here, he's just doing the same straw man over and over again, I'm going to skip to the second half of the video. I mean, do you really want me to play this comedy gold right here?
Actually, it'd probably be worse, so you should be thanking me.
No, because it's just him grievance posting while building a straw man argument. So the second half of the video is him just cutting the bullshit and telling it straight. He's not doing comedy, I guess. He's just telling you his honest opinion from the heart.
I was taking shots at the terminally online white leftist protest voter community, the people who refused to vote for Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election and still to this day refuse to own their obvious culpability in the state of the world currently.
Notice how he's blaming the terminally online white leftists and not the ruling class. You know, the very people who are engaged in genocide, who are engaged in targeting trans people, who are engaged with stripping abortion rights. And like I said earlier, there is a need to critique terminally online white leftists.
I'm making an announcement. You shouldn't be pro-Palestine. You should be anti-Israel.
downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral, downward spiral. Oh my god, he was being sarcastic.
But this pathetic attempt to redirect the blame on people who didn't vote for Kamala Harris rings very hollow in your intentions here. Watch what he does next.
People in that community are notoriously some of the most loudly hollering hit dogs on the internet. So unsurprisingly, my comments section was full of them, proving me right with zero self-awareness. There were, of course, people trotting out this tried and true gem saying, well, we did what we did because genocide is a red line for us. We actually care about genocide. We are anti-genocide, and you are pro-genocide. Not only is this take objectively incorrect and wildly insulting, it's also just kind of funny because if you ask any of these sanctimonious assholes to explain to you how their entirely self-serving and performative protest vote was meant to produce substantive results for the people in Gaza, how it was meant to substantively make those people safer, they won't be able to answer that question. The best they can do is say that it would have been just as bad no matter what, so it's a wash. And the best we can say is, well, I guess we'll never fucking know, will we?
There are two things to unpack here. One is that the Democratic Party being pro-genocide is not objectively untrue.
You are pro-genocide? Not only is this take objectively incorrect and wildly insulting.
They spent billions and billions of dollars of US taxpayer money to Israel to go bomb Palestine. There is no, they did not do genocide bullshit here. They did genocide.
Objectively incorrect.
They are complicit in genocide.
Objectively incorrect.
Donald Trump is also complicit in genocide, as I went over in my last video. But to participate in revisionist history where Joe Biden's administration did not give billions and billions of dollars of US taxpayer money to go slaughter Palestinian lives, especially as an attempt to save faith of the Democratic Party, is downright pathetic. And then the second thing he does is actually bring up like a trolley car situation. With one candidate, you have somebody who is already doing genocide, actively being Kamala Harris. And the second one would be Donald Trump, who promises to stop wars, which obviously is empty words that we saw coming from a mile away. But he signed the Belfort Accord in his first term and got plenty of money from Miriam Adelson so that he can go gentrify Gaza. He too has an invested interest in the slaughter of Palestinian lives. So you really have like three options, right? You have option one, which is already happening genocide right now and just a continuation of that genocide with no promise of stopping it. You have a fake promise, but really it's going to be an invested interest into the continuation of the slaughter anyway. And then you have the third option, which is that you don't vote at all. You don't play their fucking game. And sure, you can argue that the third option is still going to result in genocide, but if he's going to argue that the third option doesn't make any substantive changes, then he would have to argue that the first option, the option in which he is advocating for, would have made those substantive changes. And what's interesting is that throughout this video, you will see that he doesn't even do that.
The reality is that leftists who voted for Kamala Harris did not do so because we are pro-genocide. We did it as a strategic move for harm reduction. We were trying to advocate for the safety of trans people and queer people and people of color and immigrants and disabled people and women here in the United States, while also advocating for the safety and liberation and self-determination of the Palestinian people. What protest voters did is they said, I am so committed to making this self-serving, performative gesture of my support for the Palestinian people that I am willing to throw all of those other vulnerable and marginalized communities under the bus so that I can do this performative gesture that helps no one while making everything worse for everyone.
No, just no. I already made the point earlier in the video how Kamala Harris would not have done any of that in the first place. Advocate for the safety of trans people? No. Joe Biden did not do any of that. He did not enshrine the Equality Act. He did not stand up for trans people who are being attacked at the state level. Inviting Dylan Mulvaney to the White House did zero impact on stopping anti-transgender legislation and enshrining protection for trans trans people. And what's ironic about what he's saying here is that event in particular was self-serving. It was performative.
What protest voters did is they said, I am so committed to making this self-serving, performative gesture of my support for the Palestinian people that I am willing to throw all of those other vulnerable and marginalized communities under the bus so that I can do this performative gesture that helps no one while making everything worse for everyone.
It was a way for liberals to say, see, the Democrats are allies to the LGBT community while doing nothing for the LGBT community.
You know, I think I was saying before we started that my son, my deceased son, used to be the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. He passed the broadest piece of legislation that he, as Attorney General, was able to convince the legislature and the governor to sign that dealt with all gender-affirming capability. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, sometimes they try to block you from being able to access certain medicines, being able to access certain procedures, and so on. None of that should be available. I mean, you know, no state should be able to do that, in my view. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
What else did he say? Advocating for people of color? You mean like when Joe Biden raised the budget for the police? Also giving a huge middle finger to the movement of defunding the police at the State of the Union?
We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them.
What message do you think that sends to people? Standing up for women? Were you asleep when the Biden administration did nothing to stop the overturn of Roe v. Wade?
From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Advocating for immigrants? Just look at this video right here.
And as president, I won't only bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump tanked, I will do more to secure our border. To reduce illegal border crossings, I will take further action to keep the border closed between ports of entry. Those who cross our borders unlawfully will be apprehended and removed and barred from re-entering for 5 years.
Who do you think she is talking to when she says that she's going to secure the border?
We will pursue more severe criminal charges against repeat violators. And if someone does not make an asylum request at a legal point of entry and instead crosses our border unlawfully, they will be barred from receiving asylum.
If she's talking to immigrants, then that means she is threatening state violence. And given that we have this photo to reference, which was taken during the Biden administration, we can see that even then there was state violence being executed at the border under Kamala Harris's watch. Obviously, ICE terrorizing American citizens is bad too, but it shouldn't be just considered a problem only because they are attacking American citizens. Immigrants who come to the United States, regardless of legal status, they're people too. Humans with families, lives, wishes, dreams, aspirations. To uphold this legal status as to whether or not a human being is a legitimate person that lives in this country is a right-wing talking point. This isn't even mentioning that the so-called legal migration process spans across several years and even decades in most cases. Even if Austin Archer wants to argue that Kamala Harris is being somewhat moderate in her stance here, especially in comparison to Donald Trump's ICE goons and concentration camps, Kamala Harris is essentially downplaying the very nature that these particularly Latin American immigrants are fleeing harsh conditions, that said conditions were the result of many years of US imperialism in the global south. Kamala Harris may not be Mark Robinson or David Clark, but she is still upholding white supremacy and US global hegemony. Hey, Speaking of white supremacy, Austin Archer's video is about terminally online white leftists, but at no point does he ever talk about how these terminally online white leftists engage and uphold white supremacy. Instead, he advocates for voting for the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party is saying shit like this.
While we understand that many people are desperate to migrate to the United States, our system must be orderly and secure. And that is my goal.
Which brings me back to that first question. Who do you think Kamala Harris was talking to when she gave that speech about the border?
Let me tell you what the Customs and Border Patrol agents need, what the immigration system needs. It needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed in a number of ways that include bringing forth a bill that conservative members of Congress, along with others, pulled together, that we supported actively, that would put 1,500 more border agents at the border.
Did you miss it? Play that again.
And it needs to be fixed in a number of ways that include bringing forth a bill that conservative members of Congress, along with others, pulled together, that we supported actively, that would put 1,500 more border agents at the border.
One more time.
Conservative members of Congress.
Blue MAGA!
Blue MAGA! She was talking to Republicans, potentially disenfranchised Republicans. Republicans who probably didn't like Donald Trump. And this is the fundamental strategy that Kamala Harris has utilized throughout her 2024 campaign. Which means that when Austin Archer is attempting to argue that voting for the Democratic Party was a vote for Palestinian liberation, he is full of shit.
Well, it's not our fault, it's the DNC's fault. They ran a bad campaign.
I didn't do fucking shit. I didn't fucking do this!
We need a performance review. We don't need to blame voters for voting for the things that they voted for. Look, you can run from this all you want. The reality is you had a choice in this situation. You had a say. You had an opportunity to directly influence the outcome of this election, and you managed somehow to fuck it up.
According to Axios and the Institute for Middle East Understanding, the Democratic National Convention did their own investigation and found that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's policy on funding Israel billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money to do a genocide, it costed them the election. Now, they don't want to admit this autopsy that they performed directly because they're in fear of losing future elections, which is very shameful, but this is them literally admitting the opposite of what you're saying here, Austin. So I actually need to briefly pause for a second because some of the information that I just relayed to you is actually outdated. But I think that the full context of the report that was commissioned by the DNC is not only far more interesting, but it's way more damning than I previously thought. And just to give you some perspective, this report is so controversial that it even has a Wikipedia page, not just covering the content and controversy, but also archiving it in case it gets deleted. Once again, according to Axios, the report was being held in secret by Ken Martin, who is also the chair of the Democratic Party. You see, much of the broader discourse surrounding Democratic Party members' reflection on what went wrong in the 2024 presidential election mainly centered around performance-related issues, such as Biden choosing to run for re-election at the age of 81, his disastrous debate with Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris's 107-day presidential campaign being an afterthought. However, the report doesn't highlight these specific issues. When Ken Martin ran to be chair of the Democratic Party, he commissioned Democratic Party strategist Paul Rivera to write the report. But the Democratic Party claims that Paul Rivera didn't reach out to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or Tim Walz for comment, but instead consulted various interest groups, such as the aforementioned Institute for Middle East Understanding. But if you look in the report, you'll notice that Israel, Gaza, Palestine, the West Bank, and genocide, none of these things actually come up in the report whatsoever. Margaret Giroux, who is the executive director of the Institute for Middle East Understanding, said in a statement, Ken Martin should release the information that the author of the autopsy told us clearly and unambiguously, which is that the DNC's official review of their own data found Biden's support for Israel to be a net negative for Democrats in 2024. Paul was, thusly, fired from his position at the Democratic National Committee. Ken Martin said in his Substack post, I am not proud of this product. It does not meet my standards and it won't meet your standards. Not to mention that the report has multiple disclaimers indicating that the autopsy does not reflect the views of the party. They are essentially trying to distance themselves from this report. In my opinion, if this isn't damning evidence that the Democratic Party knows full well why they lost the 2024 election, then I don't know what is. It's one thing to point out that the Democratic Party is the do-nothing party while their GOP opposition are salivating demons from hell. But if the Democratic Party and its administrative leadership can't draw the line at the endorsement of literal genocide, then what does that communicate to voters about the party's stance on basically any other issue? Especially considering that we've already gone over how the Democrats routinely screwed everyone over by lining up its pins for the Republican administration that arrived in 2025. So I find it laughable that Austin Archer would not only blame the voters, the working class, and then also double down on blaming the working class when the Democratic National Committee knows full fucking well, whether they want to admit it or not, that the party itself and its actions were the reason why they lost the election.
I am genuinely so sick and tired of explaining basic math to protest voters, but I am going to lock in and do it anyway. So, Joe Biden got 81 million votes in 2020. Kamala Harris got 75 million votes in 2024. That's a drop-off of 6 million voters. Kamala Harris lost the popular vote to Donald Trump by about 2 million votes. A little under 3 million people voted third party. So if we give Kamala Harris all of the third-party votes, she narrowly wins the popular vote. But when we're counting the total tally of protest voters, we have to count absentee voters as well. The people who chose to abstain from voting at all in protest. Those 6 million voters that voted for Joe Biden but not for Harris went somewhere. We have to count them as well. If we give her all 6 million of the votes that dropped off, she wins the election in a landslide. This is not difficult arithmetic. You're only pretending not to get it because you're coping. You are trying desperately to find a way that this doesn't have to be your fault.
But you're forgetting one crucial part about this entire equation. If you want to win those absentee voters, you have to promise them a real, meaningful opposition to Donald Trump. Let's ground ourselves for a second here into the world of reality. If Kamala Harris was really that meaningful opposition to Donald Trump, then realistically anybody other than Kamala Harris could have been that meaningful opposition to Donald Trump. You could vote for me. I could be the president of the United States. And of course, I don't want to be the president of the United States. But given that Kamala Harris was promising nothing to stop any of the horrible things that was happening to those marginalized people groups which you've highlighted, it means that there's no reason for those 6 million absentee voters to vote for Kamala Harris. We just went over how the Democratic National Convention admitted that Biden and Harris's policy on Israel costed them the election. Think about what that would mean if their stance on Israel was different. And just in case somebody in the comment section wants to argue that we could persuade Joe Biden to take a different stance on Israel, Joe Biden is the guy who has been quoted for saying that he would need to invent an Israel if there wasn't one.
The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
So I fucking resent how he's just like, oh, we could just get 6 million people if we just bully them enough. When realistically, the results of the 2024 US presidential election was their own damn fault. I made this exact point in 2024, and I do not regret it. Not because I'm stubborn, but because it is true. It is a hard pill that liberals have to swallow, that being not Donald Trump is not enough to win an election. You have to promise to do the opposite of everything Donald Trump is going to do. And that means not doing everything Donald Trump is going to do, but nicer. Because people are fucking sick of it. People who have been paying attention to US politics for longer than 2 minutes, unlike Austin Archer, can tell you about the many times that they have been burned by the Democratic Party. Look at Barack Obama, for example. In 2008, he promised change. Change from what? From the US imperialism that George W. Bush participated in for 8 years.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
I'm friends with George Bush. In fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have. We're all different, and I think that we've forgotten that that's okay, that we're all different. For instance, I wish people wouldn't wear fur. I don't like it, but I'm friends with people who wear fur. And I'm friends with people who are furry, as a matter of fact.
Not only did he fail to end the occupation in the Middle East that lasted for 20 years, something that Biden ended up having to do under his own term, and according to the Council on Foreign Affairs, in 2016, Obama dropped 26,000 bombs, most of which were countries in which the United States were occupying. That same year, by the way, militarized police were invading an indigenous reservation so that a pipeline could be built across it. Maybe you were taking a nap during this time, but rubber bullets, tear gas, pepper spray, water cannons, percussion grenades, concussion grenades, long-range acoustic devices, riot shotguns, armored tanks, and police dogs were all used on water protectors in the most inhumane ways possible. During Barack Obama's final days in office, he let all of this happen. He sat on his fucking hands.
One thing the candidates aren't really talking about is the Dakota Access Pipeline. Is that something that you would consider intervening in? People have called for your administration to make a call.
We're monitoring this closely. And, I think as a general rule, my view is that there is a way for us to accommodate sacred lands of Native Americans. I think that right now the Army Corps is examining whether there are ways to reroute this pipeline
So that's a
in a way.
right.
So we're going to let it play out for several more weeks and determine whether or not this can be resolved.
And when Donald Trump came into office, one of the first things he did was sign an executive order to advance the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. So this trend of the Democratic Party not doing anything that its voters want it to do is a consistent trend. And it's no wonder that Kamala Harris lost the 2024 presidential election.
Like, I get that you're not getting your anti-capitalist, socialist wish list all in one go, but we have a mega supervillain to defeat.
I think in this moment, it reveals exactly what kind of mentality Austin Archer has. With anti-capitalist wish list and we have a mega supervillain to defeat, this is extremely evident that he is so detached from the very topic in which he is bitching about.
What about let's all work together to make sure that the far-right authoritarian, theocratic, ultra-nationalist cabal of billionaire pedophiles doesn't take over the world, doesn't appeal to your progressive leftist sensibilities enough?
Why isn't this sentiment being expressed toward the Democratic Party? Shouldn't the Democratic Party, especially if they want voters, be advocating that they are trying to work with their potential voters? But no, that's not what they did. The Democratic Party was trying to capitulate to the disenfranchised Republicans who no longer like Trump. They were not interested in our vote. When Biden got elected, they all went to brunch, let cop cities get built all over the country. Didn't think that people would see that and get really fucking mad when you categorize abortion activists and anarchists as extremists and thought that they could cash in on an early Tuesday in November. That plan failed. It failed in the 2000 election, it failed in the 2016 election, and it failed in 2024. The only reason why Obama won the 2008 election is because he made promises in which he failed to meet.
Who's this?
The usual trolls are asking if I regret my vote for Jill Stein amid the backdrop of ICE terrorizing Minneapolis and killing Renee Nicole Good. My answer to these blue MAGA people is that if Kamala had been elected, horrible shit would be happening all the time. Y'all just wouldn't care about it. I know that because horrible shit happened throughout the Biden and Obama administrations, and y'all didn't care about it.
It's so crazy every time these people try to call us blue MAGA when they use the exact same rhetorical tactics as literal MAGA. This fucking weak-ass whataboutism deflection that they do is exactly what actual Trump supporters do. Whenever we say fuck ICE, MAGA Republicans say, what about Obama? What about when Obama did it? You didn't care then.
Take a look at this channel one more time. We're just gonna go over, like, some of his oldest videos, right? Is he talking about ICE, like, at all? He's a musician, which is really cool. There is evidence that he's a musician. That's awesome. Good shit. I'm glad he's playing guitar, and I'm glad that he's practicing. He doesn't really do politics until years later. But he's not talking about ICE here, right? So what if we look up ICE on his channel? These videos are being made literally under the Trump administration when ICE is a hot topic, right? Does Superman rock with ICE? That was 9 months ago. I don't know why it matters that Superman would rock with ICE. Several thoughts on the Minnesota ICE shooting and the ensuing fallout. This was 3 months ago. MAGA's utterly insane reaction to the new Alex Preddy video. Okay, yeah, again, it's an important topic, but it's under the Trump administration. MAGA are bad liars who know they're lying. Yeah, of course, but again, this is under the Trump administration. And that's pretty much it. That's all he's got. He's talking about ICE because it is opportunistic. It gets him views. Why wasn't he talking about ICE under the Biden administration? And I mean, at the end of the day, this is a failing of American leftists and liberals like Austin Archer. In my video that I made about abolishing the border, I even admit to this fact that I didn't make that video sooner. That was my own moral failing. I really should have made this video a lot sooner than I am making it right now, because this is as much of a problem now as it has ever been. It's only gotten worse, and it's only going to continue to get worse. It was a problem under the Biden administration. It was a problem, and it is a problem under both Trump terms. It was a problem under Obama. It was a problem under George W. Bush. I admitted to this. I was transparent with my audience. Austin Archer is not willing to be that humble, unfortunately. Instead, he's willing to get red in the face because we didn't vote for his favorite white supremacist political party.
38 people have been killed by ICE in the first year of the second Trump administration. And that's the number that's been reported. There are thousands of people who have gone missing from these detention facilities. And historically, when people in detention facilities go missing with no record, that is not a good sign. It means the actual number of people who have died in ICE custody in the first year of the second Trump administration might be way, way, way higher than 38.
You're right. 38 people dying in the first year of Donald Trump's second term is really bad. And honestly, who knows how many more have been killed, have been raped, have been maimed, tortured in a holding cell, many of whom are minors that are being trafficked by ICE to this very day. So yeah, it's really fucking bad that Donald Trump's administration is overseeing this fucking level of evil. It would have been really nice if the Democratic Party made promises to abolish the very system that is allowing that to happen in the first place. But that was on my anti-capitalist wish list, which he fucking belittles in the first place. Suddenly abolishing ICE is too fucking much for this goddamn liberal to fucking handle. So instead of bitching at the Democratic National Convention, who themselves admit that they fucked up the campaign, he's bitching at you. because you dare have enough sympathy to not play the ruling class's game.
The entire operating budget for DHS and ICE during the Obama administration was $5 billion. It's up to $85 billion now. This is what ICE agents looked like during the Obama administration. This is what they look like now.
And the reason why it's worse now is because the Democratic Party set that precedent. In 2024, the Department of Homeland Security released a report that Biden's budget for ICE was $9 billion, a $4 billion increase from what Austin Archer is saying that Obama had for ICE. Again, that is a precedent set by the Democratic Party to the Republican Party that what the Republican Party is doing is A-okay. And what does Austin Archer do in this situation? Blame everybody else but the people actually doing it.
At the end of the day, what's going on here is you are coping because you know you are directly responsible for what's going on in the world right now. And you are wildly grasping for any rationalization that can help you feel better about your culpability. But the only thing that's going to actually make you feel better is owning what you did.
I'm sorry, what I did? I didn't fund Israel to go do genocide. I didn't overturn Roe versus Wade. I didn't literally sit on my hands while water protectors were being gunned down by militarized police. In each of these instances, the Democratic Party had authority to do something, to make a difference, to use their power in the executive seat to actually make a meaningful change and do something that would actually set a precedent for future administrations. And each and every single time, they have failed to do so. So are you just gonna blame trans people for trans genocide now? Are you gonna blame women for not voting for a politician that couldn't even promise them abortion care as a protected right? Are you that dumb? Are you sincerely gonna fucking blame the victim here?
The vast majority of the things that happen during a Trump presidency are completely unprecedented. So every time you say, well, Democrats would have done this too and you guys would have liked it. No, they wouldn't have. Historically, they have not, and neither have other Republicans. He is the first president in history to use the office of the presidency to grow his personal wealth by $4 billion in his first year of his second term. That's never happened before. Nobody else has done that.
According to the Business and Human Rights Center, Halliburton was estimated to have received at least $39.5 billion in federal contracts related to the Iraq War. Obviously, Dick Cheney, then vice president, didn't directly profit from the invasion of Iraq, but he was the CEO of Halliburton throughout the 90s. So when he's saying that Donald Trump is unprecedented as a US president, he's right, but the point that he's making is not illustrating that. Corrupt money in politics has always been a fundamental part of the US government. He makes this video like he woke up yesterday or something. He is just coping that he voted for a genocidal freak.
See you guys saying stuff like, we'd still be bombing Iran no matter who was president. The thing is, Israel's been trying to find an American president to do this with them for decades, and no one has taken them up on their offer until now.
You can talk about how Trump is a narcissistic sociopath all you want, but it doesn't erase the fact that the Democratic Party participated in genocide. I'm sorry, Austin, but there is no going back from that. This is just yet another deflection. And he's talking about how we need to take accountability for not participating in an election where both candidates are genocidal freaks. Never does he take any accountability for voting for a genocidal freak.
I also get a lot of comments when I make videos like this of people saying, why do you gotta punch left? Our real enemy is up there. I fucking know it is, dude. That's what's so frustrating. We are on the same team trying to fight the same enemy, and you are actively sabotaging our team.
We are on the same team trying to fight the same enemy, and you are actively sabotaging our team. I think the first thing that we need to recognize is that Austin Archer himself is not a plutocrat. Rather, he is a liberal who dabbles into the arts. And I respect the fact that he dabbles into the arts. And I want to assume, in good faith, that he genuinely cares about the topics that he is more broadly speaking here. I want to assume that when he brings up all of the fatalities that comes from the Donald Trump administration, I want to assume that these are things that actually matter to him and to the people in his life, and not just some cynical variable that he can use to persuade his audience to vote for his favorite white supremacist party. So, in my honest opinion, with polemics aside, I believe that deep down, Austin Archer is genuinely passionate about social justice. He genuinely does care about these topics. And when he's calling out the terminally online white left, he's doing so from a place of frustration because of all of the horrible things going on in the world. In real time, he is witnessing the Donald Trump administration destroying our very livelihoods, and he's doing it alongside with us. So when he says that we're on the same team, I want to acknowledge that this is something that he said that really stuck with me. This is something that stuck with me while I was making the Bad Empanada video, because I actually cannot really say the same for Bad Empanada, a terminally online white leftist who is so cynical that he actually ends up supporting the very causes in which he claims to be against, like the Zionist movement. So I understand what Austin Archer means when he says all of these remarks regarding terminally online white leftists, because it is an issue. There's so many people who claim to be left-wing, who claim to even be further left than anarchists themselves, but they're in privileged positions where they can sit behind a computer desk all day and troll on Twitter. The left wing of the past and the left wing of today are definitely not the same, but at the same time, we cannot, on a principled stance, conflate the broader left-wing political spectrum with liberalism. This is not me attempting to purity test or anything like that. This is me saying that liberalism and broader left-wing thought are not the same. Broader left-wing thought, no matter which aspect of it in which you identify with, deal with dissecting hierarchies through class analysis. Particularly with anarchism, it is an abolitionist movement. The abolition of hierarchy, and in this context, the state. Liberals, on the other hand, might care about social justice, but within the context of white supremacy and capitalism, which are two hierarchical class systems that the Democratic Party, the party in which Austin Archer is simping for, embraces with open arms. This is why I'm so hard on Austin today, because I do care about the same issues in which he is talking about. But I've been paying attention to the very things in which he is talking about far longer than he has. So if we're on the same team, then I think we need to establish what we mean by that. On a class analysis basis, where we are talking about what class positions me and Austin Archer hold, I think that we can agree that, yeah, we are on the same team. Neither me nor Austin Archer have any means of production. We do not have political leverage, unlike the capitalists do. And unlike the state apparatus, we do not maintain a monopoly on violence. In order for me and Austin Archer to gain any kind of political power, we will need numbers of people to organize and to unionize and to strike. Our methods would need to throw a wrench into the state apparatus. Our actions as a collective would need to have a social cost for those who are making profits exploiting the working class. But Austin Archer, who is essentially grieving here, is using his platform to advocate for electoral politics, a method in which has not proven to make anything better. This attempt at trying to make things better has been exercised in the 2020 election, and when Joe Biden was in office, well, I don't feel like repeating myself regarding all of the issues in which were exacerbated during the Biden administration, from abortion rights, trans rights, and our tax dollars going towards genocide. But what if we were to look towards the future? We spent a lot of time in this video talking about the Democratic Party of the past. We talked about the previous decade, we talked about the current decade, And now we need to look into the future. I'm not a fortune teller, but what I can tell you is that the Democratic Party in the present are god awful, and they're not making things any better right now.
Why can't the Democratic Party defend this assault on democracy? However you take that, the state of democracy in America to be. And I would submit to you that if you can't draw the line at genocide, you probably can't draw the line at democracy.
The first thing we have to focus on is the fact that the Democratic Party is more focused on looking good rather than proposing policies that voters are going to be enthusiastic about. You know, the anti-capitalist wish list that Austin Archer was talking about. In an article by The Bulwark titled "Thirst Traps Over Think Tanks, Dems Want Hotter Candidates on the Ballot," you have former Biden White House Chief of Staff saying things like, it's easier to elect hot people. America is a superficial nation, and we want our politicians, especially those that are representing us on an international stage as the #1 world power, to be hot, to look good. He even went on to admit that this is a foundational brunch time conversation among the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C., meaning they're not talking about policies, they're talking about how hot all of the other Democrats are.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Gabriel Lenz, a professor at UC Berkeley, went on to say, "We're asking voters to make really hard decisions, which is who is going to be the best leader, representative, whoever it is. And we're often not making it that easy for them to get a lot of other information about the candidates. So people exhibit a very basic pattern that's well established and well documented. They swap in who just looks like a leader and don't realize they've done that." In other words, the Democratic Party are so disinterested in enacting policies that voters are going to be enthusiastic about, especially considering that their electoral opposition is the fucking Republican Party, a bunch of evil fucking people, that qualitatively speaking, voters are just left with who is the most attractive, who is the most sexy looking. Democratic strategist Jesse Lerick says Obama and Clinton both had kind of intoxicating personalities. They were young and they were the cool ones. I do think that's a huge part of this. People think of Democrats in this era as the ugly hall monitor indoor kids. It's just time for us to have a hot, young, charismatic face in the party. I think this quote from Jesse Lerick is the most telling here.
It's just time for us to have a hot, young, charismatic face in the party.
First of all, Bill Clinton was in the fucking Epstein files. Are you kidding me? And yes, Donald Trump is obviously in the Epstein files as well, but let's not use the Donald Trump equivalent in the Democratic Party as an example for a potential 2028 presidential candidate. Let's just not do that, thank you. Secondly, this description that the Democratic Party are just the ugly hall monitor indoor kids, it really speaks volumes as to how personally insecure the politicians in Congress are. Instead of passing policies that people give a fuck about, they're more concerned as to whether or not their junk looks good on camera. And it really does show a fundamental disconnect between the Democratic Party establishment versus the working class, being the side in which we are assuming that Austin Archer is a part of. Healthcare for all, abortion access, protection for trans people, protection for immigrants, maybe not having our tax dollars going towards a genocide, none of that is on their fucking minds. Also, if voting for somebody who is hot is the answer to the problem, then why did Donald Trump get elected? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Is Donald Trump sexy to these these people? I mean, if you're gonna compete with Donald John Trump and your proposal is that you need to out-sexy Donald John Trump, then all you need to do is ask me to take a shit and have me write that in as a candidate. Because at the end of the day, say what you will about Zoran Mamdani and Graham Plattner, I have my criticisms of those particular people as well. But the reason why they won is not because they're sexy, but because they are particularly focused on policy. And last I checked, the majority of the Democratic Party don't like those guys. You know, the party that Austin Archer is telling you to go vote for in 2028.
But do you know any of that to be inaccurate or accurate, including the original premise that he would somehow target synagogues if they were contributing to groups like Hatzalah, ambulance services, in a way that he could hurt the synagogues? I just don't want to give out information that's false, but I also don't want to shrink from information that's true.
Well, the caller is exactly the New York constituents that I've spoken to that are alarmed. They are alarmed by past public statements. They are alarmed by past positions, particularly references to global jihad.
We are on the same team trying to fight the same enemy, and you are actively sabotaging.
Especially in the opposition of the Republican Party, these are issues that people give a fuck about, not whether or not Gavin Newsom has a sexy pic on OnlyFans. Did sexiness save Colorado Representative Diana DeGette from melting down on camera about Israel and Palestine?
Why are you sending money to Israel to commit a genocide in Palestine?
If the only issue that you care about is this issue, then you should not vote for me, okay? That's what I would say to you.
That's good to know.
I'm not going to agree to spend any more money for offensive weapons to Israel, period. When we did the...
Weapons are offensive, no matter what kind.
I understand you say that.
I'm a constituent asking a very direct question to you, and you are not answering it. If you think that you are, you don't understand what your constituents really want and need.
What I don't appreciate is when somebody misstates.
I don't like genocide enablers. That's what I don't like. I think that's a little bit worse than anything that you could perceive as rude for your constituents confronting you over not representing our values.
Sir, I don't appreciate when people mischaracterize them. I'm happy to explain my position.
So is your character that you do not care about Palestinian children
No, I do
dying?
care about Palestinian.
So then why do you keep
That is
approving
why-
more arms to go to Israel? We wouldn't be fighting Iran right now if we had done an arms embargo a year ago, 2 years ago. We've let them run rogue because of representatives like you taking AIPAC money.
Did take one AIPAC donation before the October 6th thing, and then I refused any more PAC money. I have not taken.
So
any
you
PAC
still
money.
vote
No, let me
to
tell you,
approve
that-
funds for Israel, and they're not even paying you? That's kind of crazy. Is it hard to keep track of who gives you money after 30 years in office? Do you think that maybe we should have people that have more stake in the future than you do representing us and making decisions for our future?
Nobody can buy my vote. I don't care who that is.
Okay.
You are actively sabotaging our team.
No, because these people who are her potential voters give a flying fuck about these things, not whether or not she's sexy. And honestly, if you can't have a principled stance against genocide and you can't just resist funding from AIPAC and other Israeli lobbies, if supporting Israel and its genocidal conquest is just a non-negotiable, that you absolutely have to participate in it, and you don't give two shits about what your voters think in participating in a quantitatively and qualitatively the most morally corrupt humanitarian disaster in our lifetimes, then what does that say about anything else that you have to stand on in terms of policy? Like trans rights. Once again, referencing Aaron in the morning, the state of New York, which is a Democrat state by the way, announced that they are spending $0 on transgender access to health care. Activists in New York have been trying to push for a legislative gender-affirming care fund, especially considering that New York City itself has a large transgender population. Even New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani has not released any gender-affirming care fund in his February preliminary budget. So even the bone that I gave Zoran Mamdani a few minutes ago That's already been debunked. I guess I just spoke too soon. I can admit when I'm wrong, but not the Democrats.
But I wonder if there's anywhere you feel that the Democrats could move farther left to a more populist message, the way the alt-right has sort of captured this populist strain on the right wing. If you think we could make a more stark contrast to right-wing economics.
Well, I thank you for your question, but I have to say we're capitalists.
Because in the year of our Lord 2026, we have House Resolution 2616, which is essentially a Don't Say Trans bill. This prevents teachers from even mentioning the existence of trans people, it bans all LGBT clubs from schools, and it forces teachers to out their students to their parents, which is endangering all children. That means if a teacher suspects a student of being kinda gay because they wore a pink t-shirt that day, then that student is at risk of being on the receiving end of verbal or physical abuse or being homeless if their parents happen to be homophobic or transphobic. Austin Archer might understandably assume that it was just the Republican Party who voted in this very violent and obviously hateful resolution, but no, 8 actual Democrats who are sitting in office right now voted this shit in.
Nice job, team.
Remember, this is what Austin Archer is saying that is a part of the anti-capitalist wish list, that we just want the Democrats to not screw over and get trans kids killed. It's too much. It's too much for Austin Archer to not want to get trans kids killed. I'm assuming that that's not his actual position deep down, but that is what he's advocating for. He's advocating that we vote blue no matter who, regardless of the fucking consequences. You expect me, a transgender person, to see that and think, yeah, that I'm gonna vote for that party? I'm sorry. Like, this actually makes me so fucking mad. I'm sorry. This really makes me angry to see that there are 8 Democrats in office who are willing to get transgender kids killed, and Austin Archer is blaming me for the actions of the Republican Party because I would not vote for the Democratic Party, who are fucking dick-sucking the goddamn Republicans currently, right now, post-2024 presidential election. Okay, maybe Kamala Harris wouldn't have enshrined the Equality Act, and maybe Kamala Harris would have dropped the ball on pretty much fucking everything that the voters fucking care about. But maybe if you had voted for Kamala Harris in 2024, maybe 8 members of my favorite white supremacist party wouldn't have betrayed the transgender community and voted alongside with the GOP to put transgender youth in further danger. By the way, 5% of Democrats say that they would vote for Donald Trump. What the fuck is up with that? It actually makes me so fucking angry, like visibly fucking angry, that he thinks that my grievance against the Democratic Party is just some petty, self-serving bullshit when the Democratic Party is killing trans kids right fucking now. So it gets really fucking difficult for me to assume that Austin Archer is arguing from this position that he is simping for the Democratic Party in good faith, assuming that he's doing some harm reduction fucking position here, when I have already for decades now recognized that harm reduction is not a viable and legitimate strategy, especially in the context of electoralism, because these politicians are of the ruling class. At the end of the day, we need to reckon that the Democrats are not on our team. Whew. Fucking finally got so much off of my chest in one sitting. It feels good. I feel healthy now. I feel at peace in my soul. Anyway, I believe that Austin Archer throughout this video has established that he is on a different team entirely. When Joe Biden busted railroad workers during his administration, does that signal to you that he is a champion of working class rights? No. And I made a video about that exact instance of when that happened. All Austin Archer is doing is deflecting from the fact that he voted for a genocidal freak. And it's sad, right? Because at the end of the day, What did we learn from this? That voting for genocide doesn't solve any of these problems. Voting for genocide doesn't crystallize trans rights, because trans people do exist in Palestine. It doesn't crystallize abortion rights when hospitals in Palestine are being bombed by the IDF. And an anti-racist and an anti-fascist world is not going to be created if we continue to use our government to fund a nation state that specifically has an apartheid system in place for people of color. Everything that we have learned throughout the Jim Crow history in the United States is happening in Israel. Our government is funding that. And so, can we honestly look at ourselves in the mirror and say that we really made some kind of social progress when we not in my backyarded Jim Crow into the Levant region?
Right now, the Army Corps is examining whether there are ways to reroute this pipeline.
Is that what progress looks like? I don't fucking think so. I want to leave y'all with one of my favorite pieces of leftist literature. Voting is not harm reduction. It's an indigenous perspective, and you can find it on indigenousaction.org. I'll leave a link in the description so you can read it in full, which I do encourage that you do. But I'll leave you with just one quote, and that is, if voting is the democratic participation in our own oppression, voting as harm reduction is a politics that keeps us at the mercy of our oppressors, end quote. It's a very short read, and I do encourage people to go and take 10 minutes to read it, especially if you do claim to care about marginalized people groups. I mean, what better way to do that than to listen to the very people who were routinely colonized over and over again for 5 centuries since the birth of the US empire? I think it's hard to argue against, and honestly, you owe it to at least yourself to enlighten yourself a little. That's my advice to not just Austin Archer, but to any of Austin Archer's liberal audience who may not really want to listen to a terminally online white leftist. And frankly, I don't blame y'all. But until then, oh Mr. Block, you were born by mistake. You make me ache. You take the cake, go tie a rock on your block, and then jump in a lake. I mean, do that for liberty's sake.